Power doesn't always shout, and sometimes it hides under a uniform, sometimes behind a quiet stare. On a back road in Georgia, two deputies stopped a lone black woman, expecting submission. She looked like any other driver, steady voice, no badge visible. They planted narcotics in her trunk, smirked while cuffing her, and hauled her in on made-up charges like it was sport. But that ordinary woman was Danielle Brooks, and within hours, their confidence would collapse. She was the DEA director. And their stunt didn't just backfire, it split open a protection racket. Before we continue, drop a comment with where you're watching from and hit subscribe, because tomorrow's story is the one you'll regret missing. Now listen close, because this started quietly. The morning felt suspended, like the air was holding its breath. A thin mist floated over the highway, while Danielle guided a silver sedan through gentle curves of rural Georgia. Rain from the night before left the asphalt, glossy, under a stubborn gray sky. She wore a plain zip hoodie, dark jeans, hair pinned low, no entourage, no spotlight, no hint of rank. Her phone sat silenced near her coffee, untouched since she left her sister's place. 3 days of family noise had softened her shoulders. Homework chatter, cards, and real peach cobbler. For one, she wasn't Director Brooks. She was simply Aunt Danny, folding laundry, laughing late, letting the title fade. The road ahead was empty until the mirror caught a glint. A cruiser sat too close, too patient. Danielle checked her speed. 43 in a 45, steady hands, no swerving. At first she assumed it would pass like any board patrol. It didn't. The car matched her pace like a shadow. When the lights finally flashed, there was no siren, no urgency, just a quiet command written in blue and red: pull over. She eased onto the gravel shoulder, signal blinking, engine settling, calm, practiced, both hands visible on the wheel. She'd learned long ago that caution could be survival. One officer approached her window, the other lingered near her rear quarter panel, watching angles. The one at the glass, a weathered white man, tapped twice with casual dominance. Danielle lowered the window halfway. "Morning, officer. Why was I stopped?" He didn't answer. He studied her face, then her hands. "License and registration," he said, clipped. "Routine, you were drifting." "I didn't notice drifting," she replied, still even. She moved slowly, glove box open, papers out, wallet ready, careful motions like rehearsed choreography. The younger officer, broad-shouldered, sharp posture, leaned closer, scanning her interior with hungry suspicion. The older one stared at her ID longer than necessary, then flicked a look. "You visiting someone?" he asked, voice pretending casual. Danielle answered calmly. He tilted his chin toward the back of her car. "Pop the trunk," he ordered, still holding her license. "Is that a request or a lawful order?" she asked, steady but firmer. The younger officer's hand hovered near baton and holster. "Got something we should worry about?" he mocked. "I know what's in my trunk," Danielle said. "Explain your basis for searching." The older officer's patience thinned. "We don't need to debate. Comply. Or we do it hard." Silence stretched. Danielle pressed the release button. The trunk clicked open. The younger officer walked back out of her sight. The older one stayed by her window, unreadable, waiting. The younger officer returned holding a small clear bag between two fingers, pale powder inside. "Well, look at that," he said, lifting it like a trophy. "Guess you forgot this." Danielle didn't flinch. "That wasn't in my trunk. Are you sure you want to say it was? The older officer leaned closer, breath stale. You're not in D.C. anymore. Danielle's eyes stayed calm, sharp. I'm invoking my rights. I do not consent to this search. I want counsel. You just presented something that wasn't there a minute ago. The older officer's mouth twitched into smug amusement. Now she wants a lawyer, he said to his partner. The younger one, Brent, laughed without humor, tension creeping in. Maybe she's guilty, Brent sneered. Innocent people don't talk. Danielle's voice stayed level. If you trusted your case, you wouldn't need mockery to hide misconduct. The older officer stepped in, making his body feel heavy. That tone will earn you obstruction, he hissed. Out here, badges mean you follow directions. Danielle didn't blink. Then follow policy and call a supervisor, she replied. Anything else without one is a violation. The older officer's face hardened, not justice, but resentment sharpening into decision. Step out of the vehicle, he ordered. Lower now. No, Danielle said, composed but steel firm. Not without a supervisor. You have no cause, and you know it. The performance dropped. He reached inside, unlocked her door, yanked it open, and grabbed her arm. Brent moved fast, snapping her seatbelt free, hauling her out like routine. No rights read, no clear charges, no evidence logged. They dragged her to the rear of the sedan, wrists twisted back, cuffs cinched too tight. Tight on purpose, to punish. Danielle didn't fight, but she didn't bend. Chin up, spine straight. This is unlawful, she said. I complied. I'm not a threat. That evidence wasn't in my vehicle. I demand badge numbers and your supervisor's name. They ignored her, pushing her towards the cruiser with practiced indifference. Passing cars slowed, spectators absorbing a familiar scene. She ducked into the back seat without argument, cuffs biting her ribs as she sat rigid. The door slammed with a dull finality. Up front, the older officer keyed his radio. In Unit 62, 10 of 15, one female narcotics possession, resisting. Every word was fiction. Her name wasn't confirmed. The bag wasn't tested, but the ally became a record. The ride to the station stayed quiet. Tire hum, radio static, wet pavement. Danielle didn't plead or panic. Her silence wasn't surrender. It was calculation, collecting details like receipts. She memorized everything. Cruiser number, route turns, sleeve burn mark on Brent's uniform, the exact moment escalation began. By arrival, she already had a timeline built in her mind. They entered through a side door into a dim hallway. Flickering lights, scuffed tile, stale coffee smell. This was a precinct that hadn't felt real scrutiny in a long time. At booking, a desk sergeant barely looked up. Possession and obstruction, the older officer said, handing Danielle over like paperwork. The sergeant typed lazily, then asked her name. Danielle Brooks, she answered. He keyed it in, casual, unbothered, until the screen changed his face. His posture shifted, eyes narrowing, jaw freezing mid-clench. He typed again, faster, pulled a deeper search. The monitor loaded a different interface, higher clearance, different border. Color drained from his expression like someone turned off a light. Hold on, he murmured, more to himself than anyone. He looked up at Danielle. Really looked. The stillness, the control, the way she didn't beg or bargain. You said Brooks? He asked, voice lower. Yes. His hand drifted to the phone. The older officer bristled. What's the problem? The sergeant didn't answer. He dialed. He spoke softly into the receiver, eyes locked to the screen. When he hung up, he pointed down the hall. "Both of you, conference room, now." The officers exchanged a look. Brent stepped in, expecting praise. Instead, he met urgency. "What's this about?" he asked. "Do it!" The sergeant snapped again. Reluctant, they moved. The door shut behind them. The sergeant returned to Danielle and unlocked her cuffs with shaking hands. "Ma'am, I need your phone." She handed it over smoothly. "Property logging," he stammered. She nodded. He entered her name again, deeper this time. The system chimed, an alert sound local stations rarely heard. Her photo appeared, not a license scan, but an official federal portrait. The banner read, "Brooks Danielle, Director, Drug Enforcement Administration, Classified Access Level 5. Immediate federal contact required." The sergeant's mouth parted. "Ma'am, we didn't know," he whispered, panicked. Danielle's voice stayed low, razor clean. "Secure the building, freeze access, seal surveillance, lock chain of custody desks, federal hold, now." "Yes, Director," he choked out, grabbing the phone. Danielle didn't wait. She walked to a secure terminal, fingers moving with memorized override codes. Reclaiming control in seconds, a line connected. "Director Brooks," came a voice, "Agent Marcus Delgado." Danielle spoke fast, precise. "Detained on false pretenses at Pine Bluff County. Lockdown, extraction team, evidence review." Delgado asked, "Are you safe?" "Uninjured," she replied. The officers vanished the moment identity confirmed. This wasn't random. The planted narcotics carried evidence-grade sealing. "They likely pulled it from a federal seizure," she continued. "I need exits monitored, logs copied, and video preserved unaltered." Delgado answered, "Understood. Team inbound. Hold position." Danielle ended the call, turned to the sergeant. "Check every exit. Review cruisers logged in the last 3 hours. Pull the last 15 minutes of internal video and back it up externally." The sergeant swallowed. "Their cruiser. It's not outside." Danielle's gaze didn't waver. "Find where it was parked. They didn't walk away. That vehicle switched plates or got ditched." He radioed, voice shaking, issuing a precinct emergency chirp. Across the county, alerts marked the station, restricted under federal authority. People would arrive, not to help, to question. Danielle stood at the desk, uncuffed, undisputed, her authority filling the room. They hadn't known who they grabbed on that roadside, but whoever protected them would learn. She wasn't only clearing her name, she was about to rip apart the machinery that kept men like that comfortable. And it started with the evidence room, cold air, colder history. A tired storage technician handed a clipboard to Agent Delgado as the first federal wave arrived. Fresh ink dried on chain of custody forms that already contradicted the arrest narrative. Delgado read silently, then passed it to Danielle. The bag's tag didn't match local booking codes. No property clerk number. Instead, it carried a federal trace identifier. Wrong jurisdiction entirely. The trace linked to a major seizure, Operation Iron Lancer, a multi-agency takedown months earlier in Miami. That product should have been airlifted to a secure federal lockup and never moved. Danielle studied the seal. Authentic. Test packet. Real. Meaning only one thing. Someone breached federal inventory and slipped product loose. Not as contraband, but as bait for a setup. Her face stayed calm as she said, "This was never in their lawful custody. It never should have left our facility." Delgado nodded. They had access, time, and confidence nobody would question it. Danielle turned to the technician. This building is now a federal crime scene. Lock every cabinet. Pull a manifest of everything logged in 30 days. If one item's missing, I want names. Outside, unease spread like oil under a door. Officers who'd laughed earlier now went quiet, eyes glued to hallways. No announcement needed. Truth announces itself through fear. Internal affairs arrived within the hour. Captain Talia Mercer, sharp suit, sharper silence, flanked by analysts and a DOJ civil rights liaison. They began seizing terminals and printing logs. The local chief, Harold Greeley, thinning hair, practiced smile, tried to regain control. He offered Danielle a hand she didn't take. This is a misunderstanding. My men are solid. Danielle held his stare. You're saying you didn't know 2 officers accessed cartel-level product, fabricated an arrest, and fled before learning my name? Greeley hesitated, then mumbled excuses. Delgado stepped in. Their traffic stops show a pattern, mostly Black and Latino drivers, rural zones, missing camera footage. Greeley wiped sweat. We're short-staffed, protocols slip. Danielle stepped closer, voice calm but cutting. What slipped isn't paperwork, it's trust. Either they outsmarted you, or you were comfortable not looking. Which one is it? Delgado's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, then returned with an image. Grainy convenience store footage near the county line. 2 officers climbing into a black SUV like a planned pickup. Plates traced back to Cameron Voss. Danielle's brow tightened. That name should ring, she said. Voss was a narcotics officer in Arizona, reported dead in a car fire years ago. Delgado's voice stayed flat. Apparently not dead because he drove the SUV. Danielle stared at the timestamp. Then this isn't 2 crooked cops. It's a network with resources to resurrect ghosts. Captain Mercer nodded once. Danielle ordered, dig into Voss. Everything. If he faked death, someone helped. Follow the money, the access, and the quiet people who keep files clean. Delgado lowered his voice. This wasn't random. They knew the product. They knew how to make it vanish. Danielle replied, then we don't just chase men. We chase the silence. Next morning, the conference room became a warboard. Maps, printed reports, digital logs. Red pins showed every stop those 2 officers made in 14 months, over 50, clustered with intent. Agent Claire Keaton, cyber specialist, scrolled overlays, timestamps, outcomes, identical report language. 30-plus arrests led to charges, almost all missing body cam footage, almost all minority drivers. They hunted where cameras were scarce, Keaton explained. Same phrases across reports. No supervisor review, no follow-up. Danielle tapped a blinking pin. What's different about that stop? File opened. Jalen Carter, age 24, stopped for a minor signal issue. Found dead 2 hours after booking. Ruled suicide. Danielle's expression didn't change, but the room chilled. Bring me everything, she ordered. Intake forms, photos, logs, whatever exist. Minutes later, the file looked thin on purpose. No cell photos, no interviews, no arrest footage. Delgado frowned. No suicide watch order, no psych eval, no supervisor signature. Captain Mercer said what everyone thought. They didn't lose him. They ended him. Danielle reviewed the booking sheet. The electronic signature belonged to the older officer. Danielle turned to her aide. Pull every in-custody death tied to this precinct. Cross-reference missing footage. Keaton hesitated, then opened a hidden folder. Shaky bystander video. scraped from a community page. "This was never entered," she said. "It was buried." Danielle leaned in. The footage showed Jalen dragged from his car, hands up, no fight, then shoved into the cruiser with unnecessary force. The rhythm looked practiced, like repetition, not reaction. "How did nobody see this?" Danielle asked. Keaton answered, "They did." The account was flagged and deleted weeks later. A rights group archived it during an annual scrape. Mercer added, medical examiner noted ligature marks, but no restraint injuries. Contradiction. Delgado said, they counted on no one comparing notes. They wrote it clean enough for oversight. Keaton opened another audit. Seizures listed in reports but missing from inventory. Some drugs were logged. Others vanished. Danielle's eyes narrowed. If product disappeared, it fed another plant. Delgado stood, already moving. "We audit every item those officers touched, every override, every timestamp edit." Danielle nodded. "Reopen Carter's case under DOJ oversight, subpoenas, exhumation if needed." Mercer didn't blink. "I'll file it." The team moved with urgency, not panic, building a framework strong enough to hold a bigger truth. This wasn't misbehavior, it was engineered. Danielle said it plainly. "This is structured abuse of power. They didn't target people, they selected them. This was designed." She stared at the map like it was a confession written in red. 2 days later, a secure DOJ line delivered an unsigned message, voice tight, routed through proxies. "They've jumped 5 departments in 10 years. Every transfer, a major seizure, gets compromised." The voice listed jurisdictions: Pine Ridge, Jefferson Parish, Marlow County, Lorton Heights. Same pattern, same cleanup. Then, "I'm not giving my name. If they learn I talked, I'm next." Mercer replayed it twice, then dug into transfer logs. Within minutes she verified it. Both officers had moved since 2013, each arrival shadowed by compromised task force seizures. She assembled a timeline, meticulous, ugly. In Marlow County, a 2016 bus seized cash and heroin. Weeks later, money was marked lost in transit, no suspects, no review. In Pine Ridge, a 2019 fentanyl haul shrank from 6 bricks to 2 by evidence lockup. No investigation followed. One officer's name appeared misspelled in rosters, like a deliberate blur. Mercer forwarded the report to Danielle with a simple note: "Not coincidence, playbook." That evening, Danielle faced the board now crowded with years, agencies, and redacted task forces. Keaton returned with another hit. Property room edits were made after logging, same digital fingerprint. Danielle asked, "Who had access?" Keaton swallowed. "A level 3 DEA override code." Danielle's eyes narrowed. "Those codes go to senior personnel." Keaton replied, "The ID belongs to a DEA staffer who died 6 years ago. The credentials were revived through an admin reset." "No one flagged a dead account returning?" Danielle asked. Keaton shook her head. "Because it was routed through an internal audit tool meant for emergency corrections. Something old and buried." "That system is called Xeno," Keaton said. The room went still. Mercer looked up. "I've heard that name," Keaton nodded. "Pre-cloud infrastructure, never properly decommissioned. It sits under nested protocols and can override inventory logs," Keaton continued. "It runs autonomously, unless interrupted, and someone's using it to rewrite timestamps and reassign evidence." Danielle's jaw tightened. "They used my arrest to test response delay." Mercer added, "which means an insider is active, someone who understands Xeno at the root." Delgado walked in holding older files. "You need to see Lorton Heights Task Force records." He opened a folder. A 2015 seizure under a defunct joint program, Operation Holdback. The file listed those two officers as tactical advisors assigned to rural surveillance. It also noted the program quietly collapsed after corruption allegations. Supervisors retired early, files partially sealed. Danielle flipped to the last page and froze on a name. Cameron Voss, listed as Systems Liaison, the same dead man now seen retrieving the officers on camera. "They built a shadow network," Danielle said, voice low. "They kept using what we failed to shut down." Mercer exhaled. "Then we do what no one did. We drag it into daylight." Danielle stared at the single word blinking on an access log. Zeno. It wasn't just a tool now. It was a signature, a permission slip, a phantom authority everyone feared to question. "Studies of Dominarspect." The man who agreed to speak arrived under a false name at a federal satellite office, cleared 2 checkpoints, and demanded only Danielle and Mercer be present. No recording, no transcript, no trace. He looked older than his 61 years, worn down by decisions. "You're hunting the wrong thing," he said hoarsely. "Not a bad precinct, an old program we buried, not ended." Mercer leaned forward. "What program?" He placed a yellowed folder on the table, reports stripped of insignias. Margins scribbled. "Operation Spire," he said, later rebranded Holdback. "Black Budget Joint Task Force, DEA, Customs, local fusion teams," he continued. "We weren't making arrests. We were cleaning them. When raids got messy, we corrected the narrative." Danielle's voice stayed steady. "Evidence control." The man gave a bleak laugh. "Reputation control. Sometimes we rerouted product. Sometimes we redirected suspects. Sometimes footage disappeared." Mercer asked, "How did that become selling product back to the street?" His face hardened. "Because when nobody asks why a crate vanishes, someone learns they can profit, and the cover becomes the mission." "And those 2 officers?" Danielle pressed. "Late additions," he said. "Recruited near the end. When Spire collapsed, they didn't. They went underground and built their own structure." Danielle asked, "Were they alone?" He shook his head. "No one is alone. You need access, clearance, and someone to wipe mistakes. That's where Zeno entered the story." Mercer's tone sharpened. "Zeno? Person or system?" He exhaled. "Originally a task signature, an embedded clearance layer for holdback inventory. Over time, someone turned it into a ghost identity. Scripts could overwrite logs, shift timestamps, and issue approvals under that alias," he continued. "Nobody questioned it because it looked like federal authority. When something vanished, we joked, Zeno took it." Danielle held his gaze. "So Zeno became a myth with real power." He nodded. "A myth that signs forms, opens doors, and buries bodies, because the system trusts the mask." Mercer's voice dropped. "Then someone built Zeno to outlive oversight." The man's eyes flicked away. "Or someone repurposed it. Either way, it's not just code, it's protection." Danielle's expression stayed controlled, but the room felt smaller. "If Zeno can rewrite federal evidence chains, it can launder corruption through legality." The man whispered, "That's what it was made for." Mercer asked the final question. "How do we break it?" He answered, "You don't just arrest cops. You sever the ghost, trace the admin resets, the retired supervisors, the hidden maintainers." Danielle rose slowly. "Then we audit every override, every dead credential revived. Every emergency correction Zeno pushed through. Mercer nodded. And we subpoena the silence itself. Delgado's earlier words echoed in Danielle's head. Not rogue cops, an operation. She looked at the folder, the maps, the pins, the dead names walking again, and the neat lies in forms. The man's voice turned brittle. If you shine light on Zeno, people in high places will panic. They'll call it national security. They'll threaten careers, but you're already in it now. Danielle didn't blink. Good, she said quietly. Because they used my arrest as a test. Now we test them back until the ghost behind Zeno has nowhere left to hide. What started as sarcasm turned deadly serious. Danielle leaned in, so a classified placeholder became a mask for laundering product. Warren Fry nodded. Exactly, and they mastered it fast. So fast, he added, that even cartels learned it was safer letting badge-backed units handle distribution. Less blood, less noise, faster movement, because the system looked official on paper. Who controlled it? Captain Talia Mercer asked. Fry stared at the table. No one, he said, or everyone. That's the curse. Once it opens, it becomes a door. And if you got the right key, Fry continued, you don't need permission. You just step through. Danielle didn't react, but her eyes sharpened like she'd just found the hinge. Danielle rose and paced once, then faced him. You're giving us access to these files. Fry's voice stayed rough. I'm giving you a chance to end what we buried. He lowered his tone. But understand this. It isn't just a ghost network. It's a machine. And the fuel isn't money. It's silence. Predictable, practiced silence. Everyone who gets too close vanishes or gets labeled unstable, Fry warned. Last agent who filed on a fake Zeno signature? Institutionalized within 2 months. No hearing, no appeal. Mercer didn't speak. But Danielle saw the storm forming behind her eyes. Fry stood, tugging his coat into place like he'd already accepted the cost of speaking. I disappear after this, he said softly. No protection. I've carried it long enough. He paused at the door. You can't just arrest men. You have to kill the system. He left without drama, the door closing with a quiet click that somehow sounded heavier than a slam. For a long moment, the room stayed still, like the air refused to move. Mercer finally looked at Danielle. You believe him? Danielle's voice stayed calm. I believe the pieces fit, and right now, that's enough to start pulling the whole thing apart. Agent Marcus Delgado appeared in the doorway, eyes hard with new intel. We traced a burner tied to Maddox, pinged in Louisiana, bounced a border relay, then landed in Mexico. And there's chatter, Delgado added. He's back, trying to build a new route. Danielle turned to the team. Tone even, but final. Then we find them before the next drop. No more reacting after they move, Danielle said. Every mislogged seizure, every ghosted shipment, treat it like an active threat. We hunt their playbook like it's a blueprint. Mercer nodded once. Delgado's jaw flexed. There's more. I contacted an analyst forced out years ago. She flagged Zeno before anyone admitted it existed. She refused whistleblower status. Said she didn't trust the process, Delgado continued. She's been quiet, but she agreed to meet you. Off record, only you, no one else. Danielle studied him, then nodded. Set it up, Danielle said. Within the hour, quiet location, no cameras, no friendly favors, no electronic footprints. Her voice didn't rise, but everyone moved like it had. Delgado hesitated at the threshold. You'll want to hear what she knows. Danielle didn't blink. Then we won't waste a second, and we won't give her a reason to regret coming. The cafe was nearly invisible. Faded awning, plain doorbell, no sign promising safety. Inside smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon dust, like the place specialized in not being noticed. A single overhead fan turned slow, lazy, almost cautious. Danielle slid into the back booth facing the entrance, posture relaxed but senses wired. Her coat lay beside her, reachable in one move. She didn't carry a gun. She didn't need one here. The weapon in this room would be information, and Danielle had learned long ago that data could cut deeper than steel. The bell chimed once. A woman stepped in, wearing a gray wool jacket and a black backpack. No hesitation, no scanning. She walked straight to Danielle like she'd memorized the route. She sat without ceremony and placed a small USB drive between them, pressing it flat with one fingertip. Kendra Dorsey, she said, former DEA cyber systems analyst, fired 3 years ago. Official reason, Kendra added, voice low, eyes steady, improper handling of classified data. Her mouth tightened. Real reason? I flagged something that scared people with corner offices. Danielle nodded once. Zeno. Kendra gave a tired, almost amused smile. You know the name? Most don't. But the name isn't the worst part. What it is worse. I've heard it called a ghost ID, a script layer, a digital myth, Kendra said. That's cute. It's not cute. It's an ecosystem built to survive audits, careers, and sunlight. After 9/11, she continued, they built a cross-agency integration lattice. It intercepted, duplicated archived data across DEA, Customs, and select intelligence branches. Full clearance because it was only watching. Danielle didn't interrupt. Kendra's tone tightened. Then someone embedded execution commands, access tunnels that override logs, reassign identities, and retroactively inject inventory movement like it always existed. If a kilo is seized in Texas, Kendra said, Zeno can erase the entry and reassign it to a fake Phoenix bust. Reality stays the same. Paperwork changes, and paperwork becomes reality. Danielle leaned forward slightly. Why wasn't it flagged sooner? Kendra answered. Flat. It was. I flagged it. That's why they threw me out before I could force a formal review. Kendra opened her backpack and pulled out a slim black folder, unmarked, laminated, sealed with a simple string, like it belonged in a vault, not a cafe booth. She set it down gently, like it could bruise someone just by existing. I didn't come to scare you, she said. I came because the silence is failing, and they're scrambling. Kendra opened the folder and turned 3 printed pages toward Danielle. One page carried a signature Danielle recognized instantly. Kendra's voice softened. You won't remember every onboarding document. Most directors don't, Kendra continued. But buried in a batch approval was a system renewal directive, a persistence order green-lighting legacy systems for reactivation. Zeno was one of them. Danielle stared. Her initials, her authorization, the date matched her first week in office, when everything was fire and meetings and too many screens asking for quick approvals. Kendra didn't gloat. She looked exhausted. They've used your clearance nearly a year, she said. Every rerouted seizure, every buried complaint, every vanished witness, signed behind your name. Danielle felt no shame. Spike, no panic, just clarity crystallizing. They baited me, she said quietly. The roadside stop was a test. how long the back door would delay the alert. Kendra nodded. And when it didn't trigger fast, they knew Zeno was still alive. Danielle's voice stayed low. When it finally pinged, they knew they had to vanish, because someone was awake. Danielle closed the folder carefully, fingers resting on the edge of that signature page like she was touching the exact moment the trap snapped shut. "I'm not protecting a title," she said. "I'm shutting this down," Danielle finished. Kendra held her gaze. "Then burn the root, not the branches. This isn't hidden anymore. It's institutional, which means it's protected." Danielle slid the folder and USB into her bag. "Then we make it unprotected." She left the cafe calm-faced, but the weight in her chest had changed. Heavier, sharper, more urgent. Outside, the street looked ordinary. Cars, dull sunlight, quiet steps. But Danielle felt the shift. Zeno wasn't a flaw. It was an organ beneath the agency, reacting now that it was exposed. That night, after a long debrief with Delgado and Mercer, Danielle parked in the underground garage below the federal building. Her clearance opened the gate cleanly. The lot was nearly empty. Only the echo of her heels and the faint buzz of overhead lights against concrete. She moved toward her sedan, keys ready, eyes sweeping the shadows without making it obvious. Something felt off, so subtle most people would miss it. Her windshield wiper sat slightly misaligned, and the hood looked lifted by a hair, like someone had tested it and settled it back. Danielle froze 2 steps from the driver's door, then circled slowly, scanning reflections in the polished floor. That's when she saw it. An unfamiliar cord tucked behind the wheel well panel. She backed away immediately, hand rising to her radio with controlled speed. No shouting, no sprinting, just the calm of someone who knows panic is exactly what predators count on. Security swept the vehicle within minutes. The device wasn't explosive, but it was invasive. A GPS relay hardwired into her ignition module, capable of real-time tracking and remote engine disruption. The tech team labeled it surveillance-enhanced sabotage, the kind that doesn't just watch, it waits. It collects patterns. Then it chooses a moment when help is far away and timing is cruel. But the coldest part wasn't the hardware. It was what they found next, taped behind the passenger sun visor. Plain white paper, clean block letters, a message designed to land like a knife. "Go home, Director, or someone else won't." Danielle's jaw tightened, but her face didn't crack. She folded the note once and slid it into her pocket like evidence, not fear. She didn't need to ask who someone else meant. The threat knew her soft spot. It was the point. Make the fight personal. Make the director hesitate. Make the mission feel selfish. Within an hour, her niece's home was under federal protection. Plainclothes agents embedded in the neighborhood, patrol patterns randomized. All communications rerouted through encrypted channels. Danielle didn't call to warn. She didn't show fear. She trusted her team to do what was necessary, and she returned to work, because backing down would only teach the machine it worked. By morning, the task force shifted from investigation to pursuit. With Kendra's decrypted files and Mercer's audits, Danielle ordered a coordinated multi-state operation to disrupt Zeno's quiet veins. 4 locations lit up on the board: Phoenix, Baton Rouge, Tampa, and Bakersfield, each flagged as a past nexus for mislogged inventory, ghost task forces, and compromised seizures. Federal teams moved quietly. No headlines, no press, no sirens designed for theater. Air surveillance circled high. Ground units spoke in short phrases. Precision over performance. And in Phoenix, a storage facility reported destroyed by fire years earlier was found quietly operational under a private logistics shell. Inside, crates of narcotics bearing original DEA seals, cases marked destroyed, alive and waiting. But the handlers were gone. No alarms triggered, no resistance offered, only fresh tire tracks at the rear dock and an office drawer left open. In Baton Rouge, agents hit a trailer yard believed to be a transfer point. They found an empty lot, trailers stripped of plates, office trailer burned from the inside like someone cleaned with flame. Under scorched floorboards, a heat-warped safe held untraceable federal case files, torn, mismatched, redacted. Among them, Jalen Carter's arrest record printed twice with 2 timestamps. In Tampa, a safe house tied to an inactive holdback-era agent sat cleared out, beds still warm, coffee grounds in the sink. But a server behind a false wall remained. That server carried partial communication logs, encrypted threads routed through Xeno-style aliases, including one labeled Voss. Mercer's eyes hardened. He's not a rumor. He's a signature. In Bakersfield, a man matching Callow's build was spotted boarding a private crop duster at a decommissioned strip. By the time the team arrived, the plane was gone, manifest blank. 4 operations, no arrests. Each time they got close, someone vanished. Witnesses recanted, phones died. Surveillance cameras lost power at convenient seconds, like the system breathed ahead of them. That evening, Delgado stood beside Danielle, staring at the wall of maps and faces. Blurred, circled, connected by ink lines that still felt too thin to hold the truth's full weight. "We're chasing smoke," Delgado muttered. Danielle answered quietly. "We're chasing the wind behind it. That's where the fire hides." She didn't mention the note or the wired ignition. Instead, she spoke of Phase 2. Xeno survives because it never stays still long enough to be held accountable. That changes now. We stop playing defense. We make them react. Mercer stepped in, face grave, holding a slim red folder like it was radioactive. "Then we move fast," she said. She slid it to Danielle. "We just lost one of our own." Inside was a classified alert. Special Agent Ethan Rhee, communications analyst, had gone dark. Last signal traced to Lorton Heights. His vehicle found torched on a logging road. No struggle signs, no distress call. But in the glove box, someone left his ID card cut cleanly in half, and a slip of paper that felt like the machine had finally decided to speak. The message read, "One more echo and the system dies with him." Danielle stared until the words blurred behind a rising heat she refused to call anger. She folded the note once, pressed it into her coat pocket beside the earlier threat. Then she looked at Delgado and Mercer. "They're not protecting Xeno anymore," she said. "They're weaponizing it." Mercer's voice came quiet, but certain. "We hit now, not after the next move, not after another disappearance. We find the infrastructure and collapse it. Hard enough, it can't regrow." Danielle nodded once. "Then we don't wait for a name. We intercept the next shipment and bleed their route dry." The room went still, then moved as if a switch flipped. 2 nights later, under a West Texas sky, the convoy rolled toward a natural choke point. Desert rock, narrow underpass, and silence thick enough to feel like a warning. In the rear SUV, a gunman squinted through tinted glass. "Something feels wrong," he muttered. The driver scoffed. "You get spooked every time we pass Scrub and Stone." "This ain't nerves," the gunman said, tightening his grip. This is silence. 30 seconds later, the second-to-last sedan hit hidden spikes. Tires shredded, vehicle fishtailing into dust. Flashbangs popped from the ridge, white bursts cracking the dark. Radios screamed, doors flew, men poured out with weapons raised, firing into haze that swallowed their aim. Danielle's voice cut through comms, sharp, controlled. Teams, move, breach and flank. Federal agents surged from both sides, ropes snapping, boots striking earth in tight formation. The first gunman rounded the cargo truck. Danielle dropped him with a clean shot to the vest, then closed distance fast, disarming him and forcing him down with practiced, efficient control. Delgado called positions, directing cover and intercepts. Mercer's team pinned the rear vehicle. The convoy's confidence collapsed into chaos, because this time, the shadows had teeth. A runner bolted from a cab with a pistol shaking in his hand. Danielle didn't fire blindly. She closed, tackled, and restrained him, breathing grit, moving with restraint that stayed precise. "Two moving east," Mercer shouted. "Visual on Maddox and Callow, cutting for the gulch." Danielle's eyes narrowed. "They're trying to vanish again, not tonight." She sprinted across uneven sand with Delgado flanking left. Gunfire cracked behind them, but the two men ahead moved like professionals, fast, coordinated, already aiming for terrain that ATE signals. "They're drawing us off," Delgado warned. Danielle didn't slow. "Let them try." The gulch dropped sharply, a dry cut where floodwater used to run. Perfect for disappearing and perfect for ambush. Maddox turned first, surprised to see Danielle charging straight at him. He raised his weapon. Danielle fired, enough to knock his aim and force him into cover without turning the chase into a massacre. Callow lunged from the side. Danielle met him, driving him into the gulch wall with bone-jarring force. The fight stayed brutal but controlled, each move aimed to end, not entertain. Delgado engaged Maddox, forcing him down, cutting off angles, keeping pressure tight. Maddox spat blood and laughed through it. "You're late," he rasped. "You don't know what you're standing on." Danielle restrained Callow with a hard twist and a final lock. "You're not the story anymore," she said, breath steady. "You're evidence." She signaled the team descending into the gulch. "Transport both, separate, black site holding protocols," Danielle ordered. "No contact, no chatter, no favors." As agents moved in, Delgado glanced at her. "That was close." "Too close," Danielle answered. Her ribs burned, knuckles throbbed, but her eyes stayed clear. "They didn't expect us head-on. They always ran. Tonight, they stood." Delgado frowned. "Which means they knew something." Mercer's voice crackled through comms. "We decrypted the manifest. There's a secondary meet in Houston, 48 hours, signed with Voss's mark." Danielle's breath caught. "He's still in country," Mercer hesitated. "Or he wants us to think he is." Delgado asked the question nobody liked. "Why invite us?" Danielle stared at the blinking lights across their wind. "Because he doesn't think we'll do what it takes," she said quietly. "To catch him, we'll have to expose everything." That night, the secure digital forensics annex hummed under red lighting and cold air. The USB's encryption wasn't cartel grade or street hack. It was custom, designed by someone who knew federal bones. Kendra stood at the console, face pale with recognition. Mercer cross-referenced each unlock while Delgado and Danielle watched. The files weren't chats. They were dossiers, years of orchestrated corruption, badge numbers, precinct transfers, inventory edits, buried complaints, rerouted evidence, intercepted memos, each folder a confession in clean formatting. Kendra exhaled. 76 names so far. Mercer's voice tightened. These aren't lone wolves. They're co-conspirators, placed on or near task forces, protected by clearance. Delgado added, and clearance means someone higher kept doors unlocked. Kendra opened a deeper archive. Project Holdback, sealed behind multiple administrative layers and a ghost authorization. Mercer frowned. That's pre-modern infrastructure. It was supposed to be dead. The pages unrolled. Program descriptions, funding charts, internal guidelines. Holdback's original aim was controlled leakage, to trace cartel distribution from inside high risk, heavily classified. It was supposedly shut down after a tagged brick led to civilian deaths during a Florida case. Publicly dismantled, privately mothballed. But the logs told a worse truth. Funding quietly reauthorized. 5 years ago, Kendra said, through an anti-crime provision buried in a national budget line, discretionary funds, executive-level approval under your predecessor's office. Danielle's mouth hardened. Mercer flipped expenditure pages fast. He thought he revived the original, controlled product, controlled tracing. Delgado cursed, but the framework was already hijacked. They used federal money to rebuild the engine, Kendra said. Only this time, nothing was tagged, nothing traced. The intelligence pretext became camouflage for laundering. Danielle stared at the top line. Voss listed as original systems architect, then again under an alias as auditor. His signature threaded every operation where Zeno erased or reassigned reality. He didn't join the network, Danielle said. He designed the lungs. Mercer's voice went tight. And now he wants Houston. Delgado asked quietly, "You think he wants to be caught?" Danielle nodded. "He wants us to blink. He wants us to fear the fallout more than him." Kendra swallowed. "What if he's right?" Danielle didn't hesitate. "Then we burn the rot ourselves." Danielle turned to the team. "Quiet strike prep. Blackout protocols. No leaks." Mercer nodded once. Delgado added, "And if he fights?" Danielle's eyes stayed ice calm. "We end the engine." 3 weeks later, under the Capitol Rotunda, Danielle raised her right hand before cameras in a packed oversight chamber. The room wasn't loud. It was stunned, the way people get when myths break. She sat at the witness table, adjusted the microphone, and spoke steadily. "My name is Danielle Brooks. I serve as Director of the Drug Enforcement Administration. I was falsely arrested by our own." That arrest exposed more than misconduct, she continued. It exposed a network rooted in quiet opportunism and protected by classified corridors we were taught not to question. She opened a thick folder of names, budgets, and programs misused. "This wasn't a rogue faction," she said. "It was the evolution of a failed policy we let rot under red tape." For hours, she outlined Holdback's intent, Zeno's hijack, and how federal authority became camouflage for trafficking. Then she set papers aside. "For every file, there's a victim. For every redaction, a life," Danielle said. "And for every silence, a responsibility. We speak now because the machine feeds on what we refuse to say." The chamber stayed quiet after she finished. Then applause rose, not political, but human. Within days, sealed indictments moved across 6 states like a tide no one could outrun. Some officers fled, others surrendered. In Phoenix, supervisors were arrested during roll call, In Baton Rouge, a commander tried to burn evidence before marshals stepped through the door. Federal authority seized control of multiple compromised precincts. Databases froze. Background checks reopened. Psychological evaluations expanded. 70-plus names from the USB became confirmed participants. Dozens were indicted for conspiracy. Some cut deals to expose financial routes and laundering routes. A few resigned before charges landed, and a handful chose exits that proved guilt louder than words. Cameron Voss was arrested in a private storage compound outside Houston, beneath layers of shell companies and false rentals. The space wasn't just shelter, it was a digital command nest. Server towers hummed like a heartbeat. Communications gear sat arranged with obsessive precision. 3 passports lay on a desk. Different names, different countries, all authentic. Voss didn't flinch. When the tactical team entered, he stayed seated, watching like it was an appointment. When Danielle stepped in, he looked up and offered a faint, knowing smile. "You finally made it." Danielle didn't return it. "You built a machine that devoured people," she said evenly. Voss tilted his head, no denial in him. "I built a mirror," he replied. "I just kept it clean." Danielle reached down, lifted a ring of keys beside the passports, and handed them back to her agents. "Black transport," she ordered. "No delays. Federal isolation within the hour." Voss rose slowly as cuffs locked. He remained composed, like confidence was stitched into his spine. As he was let out, he glanced back. "The system survives this," he said quietly. Danielle met his gaze. "That's the point," she replied. "Not your version, the one we fix." The door closed behind him, and for the first time, it sounded like closure. What followed wasn't celebration, it was reconstruction. Teams extracted Xeno's root protocols, decrypted them, documented them, then destroyed them under layered oversight. No quiet reboots, no hidden backups. Danielle knew removing cancer wasn't enough. Something had to replace it. A new monitoring platform was built with no single override, no manual loopholes, no emergency correction, backdoors. They named it Carter, after Jalen Carter, because his name deserved to remain visible, unredacted, unburied, impossible to misplace. Danielle sent the naming order with one line. His name mattered. Carter launched with full federal integration. 2 months later, Mercer took leadership of a new internal shielding office, operational autonomy, authority to treat internal violations like external crimes. Her first move was a sweeping audit of every fusion team tied to Holdback's legacy. Her second move was quieter, reopening dismissed whistleblower cases and sealing new protections into policy. Danielle visited the federal detention wing weeks later. Maddox and Callow were held separately, communication revoked, movements monitored. Danielle didn't sit. She stood and spoke with finality. "Whatever you thought this was, it's finished," she said. "Your allies turned, fled, or got found. Voss is isolated. Xeno is gone. No backup, no restart, no key." She let silence do the rest. Callow looked away, hollow. Maddox stared with resentment, but no power left to perform it. Danielle left them behind reinforced glass with nothing to bargain. When she walked out, cameras caught her exit. No shouting questions. Just quiet recording of a woman leaving the place where truth used to be swallowed. The footage ran that night everywhere. Months later, sunlight filled the atrium of the Reform Training Facility. Recruits stood at attention beneath a revised seal that now carried words like accountability and integrity in permanent ink. Danielle stepped to the podium without notes. "I'm not here to welcome you," she began. "I'm here to remind you, a badge doesn't grant power. It carries responsibility under full weight. The moment you put on this uniform," she said, "you are not above the law. You are beneath it, visible to it." She scanned the room slowly, not to intimidate, but to anchor truth. "We rebuilt this agency to be new," Danielle continued. "Unchecked authority, buried audits, whispered immunity, done." Her voice stayed calm. "This light doesn't blink. If you're right, it protects. If you're wrong," she added, "it exposes." The room didn't applaud. It didn't need to. The silence that followed wasn't fear. It was understanding, heavy, honest, and finally stable. Behind her, a screen showed quiet proof. Precincts reorganized, cases reopened, and victims' names restored to records that once tried to erase them. It wasn't victory footage. It was function. Danielle left the stage and walked corridors that no longer felt haunted by institutional dread. Staff nodded with respect that wasn't worship, just recognition of what it cost to drag truth into daylight. In her office, the desk stayed clean. No trophies, no theatrics. The work wasn't something you framed. It was something you continued. A junior staffer placed a sealed audit on her desk. The report confirmed the last flag department passed compliance. No anomalies, no missing footage, no lost inventory. Danielle read the first lines, then closed it slowly with quiet satisfaction. Outside, the city moved under a clear sky. For the first time in years, she breathed without bracing for the next hidden lever. The machine that fed on silence had been dismantled. Danielle looked out the window, not for answers, but to acknowledge what it meant to finish something that once felt impossible. Justice hadn't arrived as triumph. It arrived as persistence. It arrived as risk. It arrived as truth refusing to stay quiet. And now, finally, it wasn't pending, paused, or buried. It was done, written into systems designed to remember. If you made it this far, share this story with someone who needs it, and subscribe, because the next one is already waiting. In the meantime, I picked 2 more stories for you. One will hit you with a twist you won't see coming, and the other will stay with you after the screen goes dark. Tap 1 now, and I'll see you in the next episode. Have a good day, and remember, the loudest power isn't always a gun or a badge. Sometimes it's a file that survives, a name that stays visible, and a silence that finally breaks. Authority isn't always truth. Sometimes it's a trap. Many of you grew up believing a uniform meant protection. But on that misty Georgia back road, 2 deputies treated the badge like a weapon, planting a baggie, tightening cuffs on purpose, and writing a lie into the radio as if paperwork could replace reality. Danielle didn't shout. She stayed calm because older folks know this. Panic can get you hurt, and silence can be strategy. The first lesson is painful but clear. Respect authority? Yes, but never confuse authority with integrity. Small details can save a life and expose a system. Danielle survived that ride to the station by doing what wise people do, paying attention. She clocked the cruiser number, the route, the missing body cam pattern, even the smug timing of their evidence. That careful memory became a chain that couldn't be broken. In life, especially after 65, you learn that the truth is often built from receipts, names, timestamps, and the courage to document what others want forgotten. Real reform requires light that doesn't blink. When Danielle's identity surfaced, the room changed, fast. But the deeper lesson wasn't her title. It was what she did with it. She froze the exits, protected the video, traced the dead credentials, and exposed a machine that had fed on silence for years across miles of counties and months of cover-ups. Justice didn't arrive like fireworks. It arrived like a locked audit trail, steady, unbribable, and finally, public. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed someone misuse authority on the road, at work, or in your own community? And what did you do in that moment? If you've lived long enough, you've seen how a small lie can grow into a pattern that hurts good people for years. Share your story in the comments. Your voice may help someone else feel less alone. If this episode gave you value, please tap like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story, because the next one might hit even closer to home.
This is a fictionalized performance. No real people, cases, or events are depicted. This video is not news, not a documentary, and not based on real events. It is a creative storytelling approach aided by artificial intelligence.